Now, Nigeria is once again trapped in a familiar and dangerous cycle, confronting a grave national security threat through emotionally charged narratives, partisan framings, and poorly differentiated solutions that blur the line between grievance and criminality. The armed banditry plaguing northern Nigeria, particularly across the northwest and parts of the north central, has generated an avalanche of commentary for and against dialogue with bandits. While supporters of dialogue are often cast as well-intentioned, their opponents frequently argue that such a stance is insensitive to the victims of banditry. Well, let's deepen the discussion as shortly public affairs analyst and pioneer commissioner for internal security and home affairs in Kaduna State, Samuel Aruwan, will join us to discuss how we can rejig Nigeria's banditry crisis from emotional narratives to strategic clarity. But first, let's share with you, our viewers, some pivotal points from Aruwan's incisive and thought-provoking article entitled Reframing Nigeria's Banditry Crisis, From Emotional Narratives to Strategic Clarity. All right, let's dive in. In the article, Aruwan posited, and I quote, banditry in northern Nigeria is neither monolithic nor reducible to a single narrative of grievance. Treating it as such through emotional understanding, ethnic profiling, or indiscriminate calls for amnesty risks legitimizing violent criminal enterprises, emboldening perpetrators, and eroding the state's monopoly over the use of force. He also writes, and he revealed that the early victims of modern banditry were Fulani herders, whose cattle were rustled en masse by bandits of the same Fulani extraction. Eventually, these legitimate cattle owners resorted to self-help by also acquiring low-caliber weapons to protect their livestock from being rustled by the bandits, as police and traditional rulers' interventions failed, and the authorities turned a blind eye, not seeing the dangers ahead and just perceiving the development as usual intra-Fulani herders feud. Well, interestingly, Aruwan revealed in the article that for the Tiv, the Fulani never troubled them by interfering with their way of life. They formed close bonds with each other. In case of any attack by another group, the Fulani would easily repel such an attack. The Tiv marveled at the dexterity with which the Fulani fought and defeated aggressor ethnic groups and nicknamed the Fulani Pu, meaning conqueror in the Tiv language. We continue with more excerpts as he argued that the media's selective framing fuels polarization and obscures the underlying criminal logic that drives the violence. Banditry is not tribal nor identity-based violence, but a form of terrorism and criminality perpetrated by criminal elements who must be viewed and treated as such. Ethnic profiling weakens the collective battle against crime, complicates counter-banditry campaigns, and strengthens the bandits' emotional narratives. At its core, contemporary banditry, he writes, is sustained by money. What began as cattle rustling evolved into a sophisticated criminal economy with multiple income streams. Ransom payments, cattle sales, arms trafficking, illegal mining, protection levies, forced taxation, mercenary killings, drug peddling, and collaboration with transnational criminal networks across borders. Finally, Aruwan said, Nigeria must stop debating banditry primarily as a sociological misunderstanding. It is a violent criminal economy and a threat to national security and all the negative consequences earlier discussed. The central lesson from the foregoing is simple. If emotional narratives continue to override intelligence, law, and experience, the country risks repeating the very mistakes that produced its gravest security catastrophes. End of quote. Well, as earlier introduced, the author of that very incisive article is here with us, so let's hear from him directly. As they say, from the horse's mouth. Samuel Aruwan, good morning, sir, and welcome to the morning show today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, Samuel Aruwan, good to see you, and Happy New Year to you. Well, an interesting piece that you have written, but let's start from two parts of your, commentary. The first is, what you describe as media selective framing, presenting banditry, the bandit economy, the banditry enterprise as along ethnic and religious lines. How guilty are we all, since you are part of the media community too, anyway, And then second, solutions. We should be looking for solutions. You made a number of recommendations. Apart from the alleged guilt of the media, can we focus on concrete solutions? We all know the story, but what do you think Nigeria must prioritize to solve this problem?
Well, thank you for having me. Starting from the solution, what I think is important is for policymakers to really understand what is the problem. And that is why I went in details to explain the whole issue. Now, coming to the solution, the most important thing is to categorize bandits in the two categories that I have mentioned. Those that are aggrieved, those who were or are victims of these criminals, we must identify them and put them on the side. But those who are in banditry, to kidnap for ransom, to rustle cattle, involved in their involvement in drugs peddling, arms trafficking, subjecting citizens to so many excruciating situations. They are essentially criminals, and they are threats to national security and stability. And the laws of the country or the laws of the land have means or ways through which those who are threats to national security should be treated in that regard. Then, secondly, I also talk about the issue of collaboration and understanding the problem. Intelligence, we are not short of intelligence. We have adequate intelligence, real-time intelligence, actionable intelligence. We have a lot of information. What is required for the security forces, the intelligence agencies, and other critical stakeholders is to have a clear-cut operations and deals with that issue. Another matter has to do with the narrative. I'll still come back to the narrative. Why I said I have to come back to the narrative is we can't have different definitions of banditry. We must have common definition. And the common definition is there by virtue of the act, is there by virtue of the action. Anybody who kidnapped, anyone who rustled cattle, who engaged in other heinous crimes that are threat to national security, like I said, the laws have spelled out the action that should be carried out in managing that issue. So for now, these are some of the solutions that I've talked about. I also talk about the fact that in some communities, there are members of the communities who have become like a middleman, people through them, bandits get access to funds. I said I recommended that those practices should be dismantled. And above all, finances is very critical. The logistics, because bandits need fuel to operate. They move from one direction to another direction, from 10 kilometers to 20 or 50 kilometers. They need food. So the logistic component that comprises their logistic needs as well as finances, these are some of the issues that I have said in the solution that we need to dismantle most of these things. We also need to strengthen the justice system. We also need to strengthen security participatory, we need to strengthen what I would call security participatory system, where everybody will be incorporated, in locations where we're having this complex issue. Then you also talk about the issue of the media. I made it very clear. I did not generalize. I'm a journalist myself, and I am also a student of mass communication at the moment. What I'm saying is this: the media is very critical. The media is very strategic. What people consume or what people hear is what will form the basis of their decision. Banditry must be divorced or separated from ethnicity and religion. Banditry must be seen within the prism of the fact that it is criminality. It is a terrorism going by what they have done. And if you look at the consequences, if you look at what banditry has caused northern Nigeria, there's no difference with what designated terrorist organizations have done. For instance, looking at the Northwest and the North Central, threat to education is a big threat. This is a region that is battling with enrollment. But as a result of banditry, it has affected enrollment. You also look at the food security. You also look at the consequences of banditry on healthcare service delivery. You look at the collapse of rural economy. You also look at the fact that this banditry has made it very difficult for expansion of infrastructure across the region. I will give you one example. It may sound controversial, but then I know what I am saying. In the states that are battling banditry, there is hardly a public school. There is hardly a public school whose science student can credit English, mathematics, physics, biology, and chemistry unaided. With exception of some public schools in maybe Kwara, Kogi, or Plateau, or part of Niger. So you can see the consequences. So it means that the future, as far as education is concerned, is bleak. So the consequences of banditry is such that we can't take for granted, just like we have taken some signs, some early warnings in previous crises like Boko Haram, Maitatsine, that turned out to be a very big problem.
I think
so my argument is,
yes,
the media must be detailed to divorce identity from criminals. And if we are dealing with criminals on the basis of identity, it will be very cumbersome and so ambiguous to take them on.
Okay, that point is duly noted. You've said a number of things, and I think you've also chimed into something I said earlier, which is around sort of there are several philosophies around ungoverned spaces. And I read another one of your articles, specifically the one around disarmament of bandits during dialogue. And you're saying that, well, in essence, these people took up arms because they wanted to defend themselves. The places are ungoverned. There's no government presence, what Chilim would call necropolitics, those spaces where alternate forces take over, where there's a vacuum of power and governance. So in this framing, I'm not sure, I'm not sure we can reconcile media reporting with the fact that there are certain regions where certain activities are happening, whether they be inter-communal or whether they be between different communities. So I'd still like you to further unpack, because it's not clear how, if media is to remove reporting on the profile of the individuals perpetuating these crimes, how that makes the crime go away.
Well, I think we are mixing up a lot of things, and I have made my point very clear that a section of the media, if you are dealing with a problem and there is ethnic profiling, it will be very, very difficult to manage that situation. But if you are dealing with a problem and you are looking at the actions of individuals who are perpetrating that very menace, and you take on them, definitely you will have a mileage. Look at the insurgency.
Sorry, if I may just reinforce my point. Let me just reinforce my point. Some people even argue that we've gotten deeper into this insurgency crisis because there's a period of time that we went from calling them terrorists and suddenly we began to whitewash them and we started calling them bandits when we're still dealing largely with terrorists. There's a period where media was full, there was a cleanup, if I may say, of the language to be used, and we stopped saying terrorists, and suddenly we started reporting on bandits and insurgents, only now to discover that we're still reporting largely on the same group of terrorists. In fact, there's even a nexus between terrorism and criminality, that being which is ideology driven and that which is just based purely off of self-interest and the pursuit of wealth.
Before you caught me, I was trying to give an example.
Sure.
With the insurgency in the Northeast. The way and manner the government, the security forces are carrying out the counter-insurgency and terrorism in the Northeast, it is not on the basis of ethnicity, because we know that majority of the terrorists belongs to a particular ethnic group. But there is no story, there is no media narrative linking the ethnicity of the non-state actors and their terrorism. So what I'm saying is this: why do you come up with phrases like Birom militia, or Fulani militia, or Muslim militia, or Christian militia? Take on the action. When you take on the action, there is no cover. But once you include identity in encountering a particular problem, it will be very, very difficult to be ambiguous. The magnitude of the problem will be reduced to politicking around ethnicity, around religion, and other inclinations, while the main problem fester, while we continue to suffer, while that problem continue to become a threat to national security. So what I'm saying is the media should report these problems based on the actions of the individuals that are involved in the problem. And that is why I went further to categorize, to say that when you come up with ethnic profiling in managing banditry, there will be a problem. And the same thing, when you are also looking at the problems from the non-Fulani group, when you also bring up an issue of identity, there will be a problem. So let's look at bandits. I have been able to prove that when this banditry started, it started with the legitimate cattle owners who are of Fulani extraction. And government or authorities at that time did not really give it an attention. It was perceived, it was seen as just an intra-Fulani problem. Later on, it extended to the Hausa community. And from there was a response. That is where we have the emergence of the volunteers, popularly known as Ensakai or Mbanga. And they exacerbated the problem.
Okay. Mr. Aruwan, if you can hear me.
Yes.
I totally disagree with you. What you are trying to come here to say is that we should do propaganda. And that's not the media I learned. The first questions, 4 questions in media is what, when, how. And these questions are questions around profile. So it's part of the propaganda, and I don't blame you for spewing this propaganda because you work with government, and that was the propaganda as which people used to placate these terrorists and pamper them with peace deals that didn't work. You guys signed peace deal with them. The current government in Kaduna is signing peace deal with them. Katsina is signing peace deal with them. It has never worked. So you cannot tell us the kind of placating narrative and consolidation of the failure of the state in all of this by telling us how to pamper them. If somebody is a criminal, you profile the person. Your age, your race, your sex, and this is what the person did. So that's number 1, settled. Number 2, I want to ask you about the peace deals. You served in the government that went into the bush, talked to these people. I remember your role then. And in fact, I would say Happy New Year's to you. Because you used to be a regular feature on this program many years ago, when in the thick of all of this. And kudos to you for the good job you did then. But you people had peace deals with them. But these criminals still continue their atrocious activities. In fact, they've been emboldened. God only knows how many cycles of peace deals you've had. Is that the best approach, or to fight them head on? And I'm asking because the same template your government played then, this government in Kaduna too is playing, it doesn't solve the problem. Katsina too doesn't solve the problem.
Well, Rufai, thank you very much, and Happy New Year's, like you said. Well, if you look at my argument, there is nowhere that I suggest that bandits who are killing people, who are committing all sorts of atrocities that are threats to national security should be pampered. There is also nowhere that I said that there is nowhere in my argument that suggests that the media should be hoodwinked into a propaganda. What I am saying is this: there are legitimate cattle owners who are of Fulani extractions, who are also victims of banditry. And there are cases where many of them, after the criminals committed a crime, the communities are angry, or the communities are aggrieved, and any other person whose ethnic affinity can be linked with that of the criminals, is made to suffer the consequences of self-help. This is the bottom line of my argument. Now, if you go deep toward the end of my article, and even on this platform, I also made it very clear that criminals who are killing people, criminals who are kidnapping for ransom, have constituted an economy of banditry. They have streams of so many activities. And I made it clear here that the laws of the country, should deal with that act of theirs. So there's nowhere that I am suggesting that this bandit should be pampered.
Okay, Samuel Aruwan. I'll just make a statement and then you can react to it. I think in a multicultural, pluralistic society, very complex society like Nigeria, it would be very difficult to discount the value of identity politics. There's an area of academic theory, inquiry, that is called identity politics. And so these persons, when you observe the trend and all of that, the selective framing that you talk about, you can't really, remove it from identity, which is the main thing at the center of Nigerian politics. Whether it was the Civil War, or it was a crisis in the Middle Belt, or even this latest development of Christian, Muslim, characterization of conflict in Nigeria. So do you really think that you can discount identity politics in this kind of society? Or even elsewhere, whether it's Rwanda or it's Ghana or anywhere else? Even Bosnia, Herzegovina, Eastern Europe.
Yeah, if we fail to divorce identity, if we fail to divorce narratives of identity that are inimical to national security and stability, then we'll continue to have a problem. In countries like Rwanda, where the politics of ethnicity was order of the day, we all saw what happened. We all saw the culmination in starting from April 1994 in Rwanda. But if you look at the Rwandan case, for instance, Dr. Abati, I do tell some of my friends with whom we do have engagement on conflict that the genocide of 1994 in Rwanda did not actually start in 1994. It started many, many years ago. But the least we can make reference to is the 1990, the 10 commandments of the Hutus, which clearly set out, the sequence, that led to the genocide. And what we saw with the genocide was culmination. So to link it back to what I am saying, if Nigerians will continue to look at issues that are threat to national security from prism of religion, prism of ethnicity, and other political consideration, then we will not be able to get out of the woods. But if we are going to look at issues from their own merit, if someone is a threat to national security, if there is a certain misnomer, something that is abnormal, we should be able to take it on. We should be able to nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem. But if we continue to allow, if we continue to use identity in the negative way, we will continue to be in a very difficult situation that we are, and we will not be able to get out of the woods.
Okay. Well, thank you for your contribution. Just as a side note for Rwanda, it is argued that even with policies that say they shouldn't discuss tribe, that there's still allegations that one group or ethnicity is dominant over another, and it represents those who are in the nexus of power. So it just goes to tell you that removing identity from the narrative does not solve those fundamental issues that we face in nation building. But we thank you so much for your time and your contribution, Mr. Samuel Aruwan.